When you hear the word Ronin, what comes to mind? Probably a lone, wandering swordsman with a troubled past, a master of the blade, bound only by his own code of honor. This is the image we see in movies, anime, and video games, a romantic hero walking a solitary path. But what if I told you this image is mostly a myth? The real story of Japan's masterless samurai is far grittier, more desperate, and frankly, a lot less glamorous. Today, we're unsheathing the untold history of the Ronin. First, let's break down the word itself. Ronin literally means wave man. It sounds poetic, doesn't it? Like someone adrift on the tides of fate. But in feudal Japan, it was an insult. It meant you were a drifter, a wanderer with no roots, no purpose, and no place in society. In a world built on a rigid hierarchy, a samurai's entire identity, his status, his salary, his very reason for being, was tied to serving a lord, or daimyo. To lose that master, whether because your lord died, lost his power, or simply kicked you out, was social death. You went from being a respected warrior to a social outcast overnight. The biggest wave of Ronin was created by peace. Sounds ironic, right? The long, stable Edo period, lasting from 1603 to 1868, was a time of unprecedented tranquility in Japan. While great for the country, it was a disaster for the warrior class. With no wars to fight, the demand for samurai plummeted. To make matters worse, strict laws often prevented a samurai from being hired by a new lord without permission from their former master. So, if your lord's domain was abolished by the shogunate, you were out of a job, permanently. This created a massive, ever-growing class of unemployed, highly trained killers wandering the country. So, what did these wave men do to survive? Well, forget the noble quests. The reality was much more about economic hardship. Many Ronin fell into deep poverty. They sold their family swords, which was a huge dishonor, or took on menial jobs they considered beneath their station. The popular image of a Ronin as a wandering hero is a stark contrast to the historical reality of a man struggling just to find his next meal. They were often viewed with suspicion and fear by commoners. Imagine seeing a man with two swords, the symbol of the samurai class, begging or sleeping on the streets. It was a sign that the world was upside down. With limited options, it's no surprise that a huge number of Ronin turned to crime. They had a very specific skill set, after all. Many became mercenaries for hire, selling their swords to the highest bidder. Others became simple bandits and highwaymen, preying on travelers. Some even became the muscle for early yakuza syndicates, running protection rackets, gambling dens, and brothels. These criminal Ronin are a huge part of why the general population saw them as dangerous vagrants rather than fallen heroes. They weren't upholding a personal code of honor. They were just trying to survive, even if it meant breaking every rule of the society that had cast them out. Of course, not every Ronin became a criminal. Many chose different, more peaceful paths. Some swallowed their pride, put away their swords, and became farmers or merchants, completely abandoning the warrior class. Others found ways to use their samurai education. They opened their own DJ, or martial arts schools, to teach swordsmanship to a new generation. A Ronin might also find work as a teacher of literature or philosophy, or perhaps as a bodyguard for a wealthy merchant who needed protection but could unofficially hire a samurai. These men tried to build new lives for themselves within the constraints of a society that had no place for them. But there was another, more volatile path. During the final chaotic decades of the Edo period, known as the Bakumatsu, the country was in turmoil. Foreign powers were forcing Japan to open its borders, and many felt the shogun was failing to protect the nation. In this politically charged environment, some samurai deliberately became Ronin. By severing ties with their clans, they freed themselves from their lord's commands and could act on their own political beliefs. These radical Ronin became assassins and revolutionaries, targeting officials who supported the West. They weren't just drifters, they were political agents trying to reshape Japan's destiny, fighting to expel the barbarians and revere the emperor. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about the most famous Ronin story of all? The 47 Ronin. This is a real historical event, known as the Aka incident. In 1701, their lord, Asano Naganori, was forced to commit seppuku ritual suicide after a confrontation in the shogun's castle. His 47 loyal samurai were now Ronin. For 2 years, they plotted in secret, pretending to be drunkards and vagrants to throw off suspicion. Then, in a dramatic snow-filled night in 1703, they stormed the mansion of the official responsible for their master's death and took his head. They then turned themselves in to the authorities. Their act of vengeance was illegal, a direct defiance of the shogun's law, but it was also seen as the ultimate expression of Bushido, the warrior's code of loyalty. The public was captivated. While they were all sentenced to commit seppuku, they died as heroes, their honor restored. This incredible story was an exception, not the rule. It was the perfect storm of loyalty, sacrifice, and dramatic revenge. And that's the key. The story of the 47 Ronin was so powerful that it was immediately adapted into plays, puppet shows, and woodblock prints, in a collection of tales known as Chisho. These fictionalized accounts became Japan's national legend. They cemented the romantic image of the Ronin as a noble avenger who places loyalty above all else. This single, extraordinary event completely overshadowed the much more common and far less glorious reality faced by hundreds of thousands of other masterless samurai. For most Ronin, there was no grand act of vengeance, no restored honor, and no heroic end. There was only the daily struggle to survive in a world that had forgotten them. So, the next time you see a lone swordsman silhouetted against a setting sun in a movie, remember the wave men, remember the poverty, the crime, and the desperation that defined their existence. The truth of the Ronin is not a story of lone wolves and epic duels, but a powerful reminder of how society treats those it no longer has a use for. It's a history that is far more complex, and ultimately, more human, than the legends would have us believe. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into the real history of the Ronin interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories. Let me know in the comments what piece of history you'd like to see uncovered next. See you in the next video.